I was so bullied earlier in my high school years and later middle school years that I just didn't trust people. But honestly, she was probably one of the few people early on in life.
Welcome to the Sinclair podcast, where we share real-world experiences, wisdom, and the honest struggles of entrepreneurs to help you navigate and scale your business with confidence.
Josh, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on today and making the trip up from Florida, which I thought was Ottawa. What are you doing in Florida?
Dude, thank you for having me on. It's been awesome to hang out with you, kind of pre-podcast.
Yeah. Agreed.
Florida. We've wanted to move somewhere warm for ages. And I think we just got to a point in the last year where we decided if there was ever going to be a time to do it, why isn't now that time? You know, why can't someday be today? So we sold, the house of our dreams and 90% of our belongings. Sold's a big word. I mean, we just took a lot of it to Value Village, to be honest.
That's good, yeah. You didn't piecemeal it on Marketplace?
No.
Every item?
There was a handful of items that got sold, but we jammed as much as we could in a 12-foot trailer, and we headed to Florida. And it's been transformational for our family, man. Like from...
It's been what, fall last year, you said?
September. So between what I like to call, the great unburdening, like the amount of things you accumulate after 18 years of marriage is stunning. And having to meet new people, create new community. For those of us who grew up in Ottawa or in Ontario, that especially in the winter, the days can be very cold and gray. Being reminded how important sunlight, blue skies,
vitamin D, right?
We back onto wildlife. Like it is not.
Where in Florida?
So in the Panhandle, right in between Pensacola and Panama City.
Did you kind of like get the map?
There's a beautiful place called 30A. It's a little highway. They call it the Hamptons of the South. And so we don't live there, but we live like five minutes north.
Cool.
Yeah, we're a 5-minute drive from the beach, and but it's a beautiful community, kind of sleepy. Imagine just sleepy beach towns, and then a community of people who are all like-minded in that. I mean, they've left Utah, they've left Minnesota, they've left Wisconsin, they've left wherever they've been to come pursue a slower life, still have a career, but focus on the things that maybe matter more to them. But anyways, it's been transformational for our family. We've seen our kids grow. We've seen, even just getting physical distance from, Givecloud. We founded Givecloud in Ottawa. Most of our team is between Windsor and Montreal, but even just getting physical distance from team and from operations has allowed me to exercise some muscles that are difficult for someone like me to exercise. I have a deep amount of empathy. I feel uncomfortable sitting and strategizing and thinking through where we should be going as a company.
Do you have a physical office space?
No, we're all remote.
Okay, so you've been that way before.
Yeah.
Just the physical distance of being it's not like you can drive to someone quick anymore. Or go meet them or have a coffee.
I suppose. I don't even know what it is. Maybe it's purely a mental thing, but as a CEO that's getting to the kind of scale Givecloud is, it's so important to trust your team with the details, to trust your team with the execution. And I probably just can't put to words how physical distance has created a bit of a mental distance that allows me to give a team the kind of ownership that they need to have while I remain focused on the vision. Like my background is the technical founder. I am used to coding. That is where I'm comfortable. The guy you're experiencing right now, by the way, is not the guy I've always been. Like there's versions of me who, is the loner in school. I was the misunderstood musician growing up. I hid in my parents' basement, early in my career building software. That's how I got my start in software. But I remember walking into retail stores when I used to do some retail work from the technology standpoint. And I remember one of the managers looking at me, and I swear she must have thought I had special needs. Because I presented so I remember walking in and I was taking photos of the merchandising in the store because I was going to design their signage and I was going to overlay it. So imagine as a manager, you see this guy walk in and I've got my toque on and I got my jacket on and I'm just taking pictures of things. She's never seen me before. I knew the owner, but I didn't know the manager of the store.
Who's this guy?
Yeah, exactly. Who's this guy? So, excuse me, what are you doing? And me, in all of my awkwardness, I immediately kind of stand like this and I pull my hat off to reveal a very healthy head of hair, by the way, at the time. That was going every which direction. And I put my hand and my hat over my heart. Like I just went, oh, hi, I'm Josh. And just the way the whole interaction happened, my wife immediately turns around and starts folding, not laundry, folding, oh gosh. That's a recency bias. Starts folding some of the clothing and anyways.
That's awesome.
So I don't know how we landed here, but we knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
You and I jumping from subject to subject.
Oh yeah, for sure. We said that. And I'll go back to even the, how we were introduced. Amanda, our graphic design manager, who you guys have done, some great work, and thank you for the business with Brand Boulevard. She said, and she's such a loyal follower. She's the best. She always comments on from the, the coaching business, the website, the content, every podcast I think she's watching. And she reached out and said, you have to get Josh on the podcast.
Wow.
And when someone is so direct like that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to call him. So I looked you up, but then we just had a chat. And I think in 3 minutes, I realized hey, this guy's awesome. In 10 minutes, I'm like, what a cool story. And in 30 minutes, I'm like, we're going to hang out. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, thank you for making the time again. But one of my favorite things is to give context to you and your story is take me back to sort of some childhood stuff growing up. Sure. What made you you? It's a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, I'll share broad strokes. As you know, I'm an oversharer, so feel free to double click on anything.
Likewise.
My parents met at a time in life where my dad was in recovery from being, a drug addict, like intravenous drugs, just really heavy. And so my upbringing was really centered around a recovery program, a faith-based recovery program, but a real high degree of control. It was...
How old were you when he started in that program?
I mean, I was born into it. But my dad would have been probably 24, 25 at the time. And that's where I spent a lot of my time. My parents spent a lot of their time until I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Just a high degree of control. We were at this community, probably 10 times a week. Wow. So this, kind of becomes a bit of my framework for my view of the world, that there's us and there's everyone else that needs what we have, right? So it was a bit of an us versus them mentality. There's also lots of rules. So while I was, in a part of a loving community, I think, carried a lot of baggage around, control, faith systems, faith communities, and things of that nature that I've had to work throughout my life. But it's interesting because I would later be introduced to other communities that were far less controlling, a lot more loving, a lot more community oriented, and I would have to credit some of these communities with the Josh you now know. These were the communities that gave me an opportunity to mentor, to coach, they gave me a reason to be into music, and so I would lead the music every Sunday. So it'd be my early band. It was in a band called Midday Blackout, and we did little tours around Ontario and played some shows in New York. It was a blast, and it would actually be the drummer in that band, my buddy Matt. Him and I would work on software, and that he would really give me an opportunity to get into programming for the first time and design. And so,
how old are you at that point?
Probably 17. I remember it being one of the last years of high school because cool. I remember being the first co-op student in Ontario to do co-op at home.
Really?
I had to do a whole pitch, a whole project.
Dude, you were the work from home, OG?
I was the OG work from home. That I remember
awesome.
Doing a pitch saying, if someone can do co-op at Blockbuster, putting VHSs back on the shelf.
Returns back on.
Yeah, like it's certainly more value in me. I understand I'd be working from home, and I understand the risk that it appears, would be inherent in a 17-year-old working from home, but I'll be accountable. I'll show you my timesheets. I'll show you the work I do. So it was around that time.
And early on in the coding, did you early go, this is cool, I love this,
the greatest thing ever. Yeah. And I remember even early in the context, we were building software. We would go on to build software for the US government, but early on, it was actually building software for these communities, which they're nonprofit communities, and nonprofit organizations are very similar to for-profit organizations. They are groups of people on a mission. There's some mechanics that change how nonprofits have to behave, but largely the success metrics are the same. You want to have some kind of impact in the world. I'd say nonprofits have the unfair advantage of having to deal with this other stakeholder, which is the donor. Guys like you and I as entrepreneurs, we're concerned with impact, and that is centered almost squarely around the customer. No, squarely around the customer. Sure. With nonprofits, they have their beneficiaries who they're trying to do awesome work for, but then they court donors and these investors in a sense, which I suppose is roughly mapped to investors in a for-profit business, but
similar but different.
Yeah, I mean most businesses don't have investors, right? We're talking about the mom and pop shops, right? So,
so you're down in the U.S. This is a great story.
Yeah.
You're coding for the U.S. government.
Yes.
Which you said earlier, it's like if they knew who was coding their stuff at the time.
No, I remember, and I'm sure my buddy remembers as well. I remember being in a Florida government building. I'm sure my voice was squeaking. I am confident of it. I was wearing a shirt that was too big and a tie. And I remember one of the managers walked in and looked at me and then looked at my buddy and said, "How long has he been programming for?"
That's great.
It was long enough. I won't say how long I had been programming, but it was definitely long enough. And I mean, this was the Wild West, Chris, of web development, where you could have an idea and there was very little regulation or...
I mean, this is .com boom. This
is
like
this is literally 2000. This is like in the 2001 to 2004 pocket.
Yeah.
And those were some of the best years of my life in coding. Like it was, again, like the Wild West. Imagine it, and you could create it. And most likely, it probably hadn't been built yet. So you weren't just a creative making something come to life. You were an inventor, right? Like,
what
missed those days. Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Along the way, when did you have the moment that you're like, I don't want to do this for other people. I want to do this on my own.
I think it was the realization through my experience in partnerships that if I wanted to have the degree of impact I wanted to have, I was going to have to be in the driver's seat. I was going to have to start it. I was going to have to be the initiator. Gosh, I haven't really worked on putting great language to this, but I suppose I had just an early understanding that while people may have good intentions, it's hard to balance good intention with right action, because there are selfish motives involved. Anytime there's money involved, and this is some of the best advice I actually got from one of my investors was early days. Josh, things are going great right now, and it's awesome, and the conversations are easy, but you just wait until your company's worth $100 million. All of a sudden, people are coming out of the woodwork going, well, hey, listen, I spent a lot of time with Josh. We did a lot of coaching together. Shouldn't I get a little more? Or shouldn't, this hasn't happened, but this was kind of the picture that was painted for me. But anyways, I think it's human nature to struggle with what you intend to do versus what you actually end up executing. And so yeah, that would have been the moment. And so I remember I actually stumbled across, during the great unburdening, going to Florida, dude, I stumbled across the point form list of things I was going to say to my business partner when I was quitting. Honestly, it was a bit emotional looking at that list, like remembering the moment. I remember calling my one of my other business contacts at the time. My dad would have been in recovery at that time, so I didn't have like a male role model to call. And I just called this guy bawling. Like in my mind, I was making the fork in the road decision here. And, rereading, and then him just giving me like an encouraging little note. And then I was off to start this journey of taking everything I had learned, building enterprise level applications for the US government to figure out how I could do something for under-resourced entrepreneurs. And there was no more under-resourced entrepreneur than my dad and my mom and my dad, who took over our family business, which is a bakery in Ottawa called Artistic Cake Design. And my grandfather started it when he was 70.
That blew my mind away. If that is not one of the most inspirational
Right?
things I've ever heard, like 70 years old, what made your grandfather start a bakery?
Oh,
like that's not an easy business for anyone, let alone someone that's 70.
It's not. And listen, this will paint the picture. I mean, for those listening to this who might think, in order to be an entrepreneur, there is, a methodical process that you go through, and you're a clear thinker, and you've got step 1, step 2, step 3. I didn't learn until recently that my grandfather, who started this business at 70, also had a substance abuse issue. Okay, so passionate dude who struggled with alcohol, but was delusional enough to think that at 70 he could just do whatever he wanted. I mean, I think the better question isn't what made him start the business at 70. It's, well, why wouldn't anyone start something at 70?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you take care of yourself enough, you should have the energy and how do I say this? Yeah, I guess I suppose there's an element of not luck, but I want to say just blessed enough to have the opportunity to start a business at 70, because health is something that we take for granted, and kind of who knows where that goes. But he was, I suppose, healthy enough to do so. But also, I think delusion had something to do with it. And I mean,
that's kind of a good mix, right?
Right? Like, you might relate to that. Like,
yeah,
what are you thinking starting brand, bro?
Is there
like,
not an element of a lot of entrepreneurs that have a bit
Exactly.
of that delusion that's a piece of the puzzle?
Exactly. I mean, there's a whole train that we could go down here, but I mean, reality is what you make it. And if you decide that I am the degree I earned, I am the son of who I am the son of, and my life goes this way, that is how your life is going to play out. But you can change it. And listen, if any of my friends watching this would know this, especially if they knew me when I was 17 years old. Like, if Josh can go off and do what he's doing, anyone can do this. Like, I almost want to pull up pictures of my life at 17 years old.
We'll put them in the reel after.
Yes.
I love it.
But it was actually, I went to high school with my wife. And I remember her talking about what I looked like from the outside. And I mean, I was just like, my head was down all the time. I was in and out of school. No one saw me, but I was like this mystery boy who was always on the computer. Created a bunch of barriers so that no one could contact me or be around me, because I was so bullied earlier in my high school years and later middle school years that I just didn't trust people. But honestly, she was probably one of the few people early on in life. She was just, the beautiful girl who came up to me and said, "Hey, I know you." And I went, malfunction. Like, just, what are you talking about?
Do I have to talk to you?
Yeah. Just like, as the nerd, having the most beautiful girl in school come up to you saying, "I know you," was, it was jarring. But anyways,
Man,
turns out
that is special.
she lived across the street from me when I was 6 years old, and that her dad was in a band that my dad used to be the roadie for.
Yeah.
So my dad rents a house in Barhaven, just outside of Ottawa, a townhouse, and he walks out of his townhouse one morning. They had just moved in, and another gentleman walks out of his townhouse one morning, and they're both staring at each other. And Steve, my now wife's dad, says, "Brian?" And my dad looks across and goes, "Steve?" And you know what his first question was? "You're still alive?"
No way.
That's how bad my dad's drug thing was. Yeah, it was intense. But anyway, so that's like a super interwoven story.
I want to go back to, so a couple things. One, let me start with, what was the moment or what was the experiences along the way that took you from that like shy head down, coding, nerdy high school kid to like the guy you are today, which is magnetic, electric, like absolutely someone that people want to be around, and like you like omit energy, like positivity. Energy.
Yeah.
It's so different from what you described.
Yeah.
Was there an event or just a series of things that happened to shape you that way?
I'm not sure. Like I can't pinpoint it to a single event. But the way I might talk about it is I started to believe the things people said about me.
Wow.
Josh, you're so creative. Josh, that was so encouraging. Josh, you're so good with your words. Like, what do you mean I'm good with my words? Like, I stumble. You get me in a private conversation, and maybe I looked more like I do today in private conversations or in small rooms. And I just started to believe some of the things people said about me, no matter how uncomfortable it was. And so I'd get into a little bit of a bigger room, and then I'd be in a bigger room, and then I'd be in, in these rooms, and these groups of influence would kind of slowly expand. But I don't know if it was any one moment. It was a journey of getting comfortable with the things I'm not good at. Being okay that, even though I might be energetic and that sometimes I have a hard time keeping a convo going, and that's okay. And you know what? Maybe it's even endearing that I can be a little awkward sometimes. But, and I'm not always going to have the right answer, but I think I ask good questions, and I really want to be a good question asker. Oh man, if there's anything I would want people to say about me, it's that guy asked really thoughtful questions. And questions that brought people together, questions that opened minds, questions that made people curious where they were previously not curious. Like, and here we are again talking about something else.
Yeah, which is awesome. So you shared a post on LinkedIn pre-Christmas. It was you playing this beautiful song, and I got to it, and we had connected at that point. I'm like, this is so cool, and there was a vulnerability title in it.
Yeah.
Tell me about what made you do that, and also, where did you get the vulnerability piece from?
I think in order for any of us to really be our true selves, it takes vulnerability. Yes, on the trip here, we bumped into someone in business, and a very standoffish dude, not welcoming at all. And as my wife and I were kind of analyzing the interaction, we stumbled across this language that it actually takes more confidence to be kind than to be standoffish and kind of almost broody in business. It takes a lot of confidence and vulnerability to assume good intent, to share ideas, to share yourself. I have just got no interest in kind of masking or playing games or, I want the people I work with and the people I connect with to be themselves. If you wanted to even look at this from the most selfish capitalistic standpoint, getting the best out of people is good for business.
Absolutely.
And if you want to get the best out of people, you got to build trust and connection, and they got to feel open to share ideas with you. That's not necessarily my view on it. My view on it is people are born with purpose. I don't know if that purpose is set in stone when they're born, but meaning it's malleable. Maybe my purpose at one point was to encourage people through music, and now it's more in a business context. And I never dreamed that would be the case.
Yeah, and I agree. That's not linear. I think that can change depending on what's happening and people or stage of life or whatever that might be.
Absolutely. And I see it as my responsibility to pull that purpose out of people. That's how and so if I guess I see vulnerability and I see vulnerability as the fastest road to that. And I know vulnerability is a scale. There's a level of vulnerability. Brene Brown talks about this in I'm not sure which book it is, but I've kind of read into her thoughts and ideas around trust, but there's a level of vulnerability that's almost blinding and makes people feel uncomfortable. You're not going to dive in about, how your first marriage failed or about,
not airing all your dirty laundry.
Exactly. But there's a mix. There's a blend of saying, I went through this really difficult time once with, and being vague enough about it that people understand, wow, this guy's human, without being so vulnerable about it, and vulnerable in the right context and so on. But that post, was posted at, like people had to pull teeth for me to be okay with them posting this on my behalf, because it was a level of vulnerability that I'm not used to. I'm used to being vulnerable with people I'm sitting across the table with. I'm not necessarily used to being vulnerable in a social media environment, right? And so I know LinkedIn, people want to think it's a business tool. It's social media for business people to,
Agreed.
And so, and I don't always love that, but to the degree I could create some humanity and, share the story that, about these rooms that I'd been in the past, that I'm not sure if anyone, in your audience can relate to this or not, or even maybe yourself, but part of the downside of my community journey, my journey through a faith community, was I so excelled at the things that were valuable in those communities, right? So eventually got great at the speaking part, eventually got great at the leading part, got good at the music part, got great at the encouraging part. These are the individuals that really make these organizations flourish and grow, and it's in their best interest to leverage my skills as much as possible. And when you're in an environment where there's typically not great HR cultures in these environments or boundaries, like these aren't 9-to-5 jobs, these are lifestyles, right? And so, so what you end up with is a world where people are affirming you for the things you're good at today. And they'll say, this is what you were meant to do.
And that helped them. Which
Precisely.
You're saying, yeah.
And so it just got to a point where I began to wonder if I had a bigger vision for myself, doing maybe some of the things that they were saying I was good at, but not in those rooms, in bigger rooms. How am I ever going to have a conversation, bring hope, bring purpose, bring life to people who will never come into these rooms? There are people who will never go into these churches, whether it's baggage from their own upbringing or what they've heard about church. And yet there is a hope in these communities without getting into the religious side of it at all. There's a hope, a community, and a connection that honestly, I would go so far as to say that some of the degradation we're seeing in our society today can be narrowed back in on the failure of faith communities. And what I mean by that is if you look back 100 years ago, the town I grew up in, the church was literally the middle of the town.
Sure.
Right? And the school was right beside it. And it's what everyone did on Sunday.
I'd love to know the percentages, like 100 years back, 50 years back, of like those that attended a community gathering or church
I think
once a week.
It probably, I'm not sure, but I do know that it would is, pardon?
It would be very high and a lot higher than it is today.
Yeah, and there wouldn't be as much conversation around the belief system. It would more be, this is just what we do, and then we come together as family, and I mean, this is built into even just a lot of cultures. It's talking to our COO, he's Italian, and like church was something they believed in, but it was just one of the seasonings to a very robust recipe of family and community. Yeah. It was just one of them, but it was the thing that brought them together on Sunday when they normally wouldn't see each other. But where did you go when you needed help? right? You'd go back to that community. Where would you go if, back 100 years ago, who ran the school or who ran the, and listen, I know there's tons of controversy around the Catholic Church and how they ran things, but that's, for me, again, not what it's about. It's about community. It's about the connection. And so, honestly, in a roundabout way, those are the skills I'm trying to take out of those faith communities. Like, how can I make Givecloud a place where, why should you hate the place you go to 9 to 5? Yeah. This is something we all have to do. Okay. And yet there's work to do. We do have to reply to customers, and sometimes customers can be nasty. And but is there purpose here? Is there bigger purpose here? Yes, there is. And I think our bigger purpose here is to connect with people and have relationship with people and bring the best out of others. And there's arenas in our life where we get an opportunity to do that, and work is one of them. And maybe you're in accounting, and maybe there's unique opportunities and avenues through, your financial management that you're able to be a light in the world, whatever you believe, right? Yeah. And so making Givecloud a place of, honestly, of hope, where you can, one thing I try to impress on the team is that, no matter the politics or even the way some of our nonprofits achieve impact, because we all have different belief systems on really hot topics, and we've got a variety of nonprofits that use our platform, but that somewhere in the mix, there's this blend of your view and my view and our pursuit of how we're going to make the world a better place that makes the world a better place. And it's actually, my lean over here and your lean over here, and that makes, there's a beauty in that, and it's us coming together to solve the world's problems that makes the world a better place. And so that's a little bit about how that kind of where that post came from. For me, it was me formally kind of declaring to the world, maybe even to that community as well, to say, you made me who I am, but it's not where I'm going to stay, and that's not bad. Yeah. And in fact, we should be creating communities. And I even share this at Givecloud. I'm excited for what my team's going to go do next. Whether, no matter the circumstance, I hope they can stand on Givecloud's shoulders in their career, that they would learn something here, that they would establish a skill, establish something that would allow them to excel. That, it's highly egotistical for me to say, Givecloud for life, guys. Get the tattoo. It's you for life, man. Like, it's your purpose. It's what you need to accomplish in life. And if I can help you get there and Givecloud can be a part of that, awesome.
I kind of laugh, and there's some of this going on with our company. There's been such a big change, in senior leaders and culture shift. I mean, bringing an outside CEO in is a huge change for a family, like very, culture focused. But there was elements, I think, in the past where it was that, you're with us or against us. And I think what's happened is this beautiful mix of, what are the things that previous, that Sean and I did really well, that the employees stayed for and appreciated, and what are some of the new things that are also, being embraced and different. And that whole element of, I believe the same thing, that whether you're here for, 1 year, 10 years, or 20, whatever that is that our job is to make you a better leader, a better human, better at what you do, so you can stay or go. And I think that's a culture shift in business too, in that responsibility of an owner and a leader within your company, is to just make people better. Because if we're not doing that, then why are they with us? I loved all your points to vulnerability. I mean, I said, I think we got in the car, and it's like, I'm an oversharer too. Like, and there's moments in time where I've just, I've sat after a deep conversation with a team member or something. I'm like, it's that a little bit of shame going, maybe did I share too much? But I always go back to, like, no, I didn't. And I stand for, when I can share something, again, not airing dirty laundry, but share something that lets them see that I am human, I am imperfect, I have flaws and trauma and these things, like all of us do. Then people can go, oh, you mean, Josh, you're normal too? Yeah. Okay, we're now on the same page, and we can, work through whatever those challenges are. And I think that's just something that every employee and culture and company needs to have more of, is like, vulnerability is okay. I think that as generations before us, our parents, their parents, where you don't talk about these things. You don't talk about difficult things. It was
true.
More, you work for me, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a need. I think it's mandatory now. I think if you really want to attract and keep good people, I think that's a part of the recipe you have to have.
Yeah. Man, I'm just processing everything you're saying. Like what, there's this blend that you need. Like I'm thinking about, I love sports analogies. I can't skate. And I'm really brutal at throwing a football. So I am not an athlete. But
my buddies all make fun of me too because I don't follow. So like I don't care about stats or people I can't even. I love I used to play some sports. I love going to games.
Yeah.
Like, you don't ask me about anything sports related.
Yeah.
But I love the analogies too. So
that's me.
Go. Yeah.
I think through like the dynamics of what makes a healthy team, and there is a degree of respect for your coach and for your captain, but I doubt that in the highest performing teams, those leaders demand respect. They command respect, right? And it's a nuance and it's different. They're not asking you to, salute them when you walk into the room. You salute them because, like, man, this guy's so believed in me, so poured into me that, like, I respect that leadership in a sense. But I guess what I'm just trying to hint at here is that, like, I don't think you and I are advocating for what someone might think is a soft culture of pure vulnerability and mess. I'm just trying to get at like an analogy that captures this idea that, like, man, as my teammate, I need you to be at your best. Man, if you're throwing better, I'm catching better. And if you're blocking better, we're running better plays together. And there's a vulnerability it takes in us being able to tell the truth to each other in order, and even harder than telling the truth, I think, at times, is being a safe place to hear the truth, especially if you're the coach, right? You think you know. It's
an environment where it's okay to say, hey, can I just share this with you?
Yeah. And to be the kind of leader who doesn't immediately react, to be the kind of leader who sits with the truth, even if it's someone else's, and processes how true it could be, and whether, how much responsibility you need to take. But this is one of my favorite pieces of advice to give to people, is being a safe place to tell the truth, right? Like, if you are a safe place to tell the truth, odds are you're a great leader, because what it takes to be a safe place to tell the truth, there's just a ton of overlap. There's like kind of a Venn diagram, great leader, safe place to tell the truth. There's just so much overlap in those, in what that would take, to have a low enough ego to hear it and not react right away. To immediately think of an excuse of why it's not true, right? Hold on a second.
Defend yourself,
yeah.
Defend others.
Yes. Man, I had a list I had kind of journaled around this entire topic that, of course, is escaping me now that you and I are chatting. But so much of what's required to be a safe place to tell the truth is what it takes to be a great leader. And so, that's honestly one of the number one things I think about inside business and even outside business. It's been a game changer in my marriage that my wife could tell me a truth about how I acted today.
Yeah.
And I don't immediately say, well, and start running the economics of our marriage and go, well, I actually did these things. And you like I am tempted to do. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, but
I get so it's like the piece I've learned in most other spots in life, but it's like, we're newly-ish married, but it's like every time it's like, when I'm not at my best, or when it's Chris going into defensive mode, and then she's like, hey,
yeah,
it's okay. And just, again, we can get back to center, but that's that default. And I find it so hard in that space.
So hard. Talk about vulnerability. It's one thing to be vulnerable with others. It's actually a totally different level to be vulnerable with yourself. And I know it sounds a little meta, but someone being a safe place to tell the truth means you need to be able to sit with something mega uncomfortable.
Something I've been thinking about, we talk a brand, and I want your opinion on my take in employment is that everyone comes, to a job or a career or whatever, and they have a different currency. For some, it's money. They're driven by dollars and rewards and income. And for others, it's recognition. For some, it's just like, it's the spot that I have bills to pay and this job fits my liking. How do you balance a team of 35, which is a big crew? How do you balance the individuals with all those different currencies of what they value when thinking about culture?
It's a great question. As I think through our hiring process, when I think through our team and the kind of people we attract, I think there is a unifying, a common denominator across our team. And, it is this belief in something bigger than the job. I think if you can get people's eyes higher than the money they're making or the job they have to do, you get to almost sidestep the question. You almost get to, and you end up with a culture that almost becomes a bit of a flywheel where, at its best, it's a place where people are telling the truth and everyone's pushing towards the higher motive and the higher goal and the higher mission. And maybe at its worst, it gets a little culty and you're not telling the truth and it becomes too much about that big picture or an ideal that hasn't really been double checked in a while. But, I've seen it work too often where if you get people's eyes, again, off what they do and why they do it, the rest doesn't matter.
It's the Simon Sinek, right?
Yeah.
The power of why. What is that for Givecloud?
Oh, great question.
Vision, mission, whatever. Like, what is that rallying cry that has allowed you to create the team you have today?
I mean, the rallying cry has come, I guess, from my origin story building software where, that moment where I realized this gift I have for programming and how blessed I've been to have the platform to use it is unique. And there are, again, entrepreneurs like my parents who would just have no idea how to deploy this technology and use it. Enter the most under-resourced market of them all, nonprofits, right? These are people who have the courage to do what I know I certainly don't have the courage to do, which is to, drop my priorities in life and focus on the priorities solely of others. How do I feed these people? How do I clothe these people? How do I protect these people? How do I educate these people? How do I create an impact in the world bigger than me that, has no financial gain? They're looking to, these organizations and our customers just have the absolute best whys.
Yeah.
And our entire mission at Givecloud is to untie their hands, where some of these organizations fumble around with software day in and day out. We want them focused more on their mission rather than administration. We want them leveraging people to make an impact instead of leveraging people as, and listen, I know there's a degree of operations that every nonprofit needs, but the more we can use people to impact the lives of others rather than poking around in spreadsheets.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like that's my
way.
vision. And with AI now and with where technology is going, it's becoming more and more of a reality that technology is becoming the superpower for nonprofits, where just as it is in business, where it's becoming the great assistant to help us now not just work more efficiently, but communicate better with AI. And I know a lot of people say, AI, it sounds robotic. Man, if you put in a rough draft of an email you want to send in your tone and ask AI to just, can you improve on this for me? It doesn't materially change your tone. It oh, that's the word I was looking for there. Oh, that's how I wish I had said that. Man, I have found it to be a communication changer for myself, but untying the hands of these world changers would be our why at Givecloud.
It's incredible. You have served over 2,000 customers on your platform.
Yeah.
Currently working with how many? Like hundreds?
Yeah. We've got 850, I think, active on the platform. We just did a record December as far as fundraising is concerned, and a record year in fundraising. So helping these nonprofits raise hundreds of millions of dollars, mostly in the U.S. and Canada, but some around the world as well. And as I said, these customers just have the best why, and it's incredible to work with organizations who are doing things you didn't know were things. Yeah. Right. One of my favorite customers I worked with in the past was, going into the most dangerous areas of the world and rescuing kids. And they end up making a movie, full-length movie, Sound of Freedom, on these guys. Great organization. Another organization we've worked with is an organization that rescues elephants. Elephants, bro.
That's so cool.
Like, they're in the entertainment business. They're in these spaces, and there was someone in Tennessee who thought we should make a sanctuary here in Tennessee for these elephants where you can. And listen, if even as a donor, I believe even as a major donor, you can't go visit the elephants. Like, they have strict rules. These elephants are to be isolated in the wild because this is what they deserve. Wow. And elephants.com, unreal organization, and even more unreal founder and team, just unapologetically devoted to the impact that they want to have. And but I mean, those are just two that come to mind that, as a kind of naive individual coming into the space, I thought there was evil in the world, but I didn't realize it was that evil. And I thought there were some, quirky organizations out there, but I didn't realize this meaningful. Like, I just never imagined elephants need rescuing, and that there would be a sanctuary in Tennessee that does this.
It's incredible. So you get to see all these amazing organizations.
All of them, yeah.
So, I mean, it's been like, let's call a spade a spade. It's been a tough economy in Canada and the world for the last couple of years. I mean, post-COVID, right? There was a lot of bad in COVID, a lot of challenge, a lot of great, a lot of very successful businesses, but across the board, there seems to be just like dollars aren't getting stretched as far. So your clients, which would be the donors, looking for ongoing donations and support. How much donor fatigue is happening, and like, how are these organizations and charities standing out amongst the thousands that are competing for the similar dollar?
It's a great question. I mean, listen, there's a handful of answers to this. Organizations, the reality is that the organizations that end up in front of their donors are run a little bit more like businesses, right? Like, you need to be advertising on Instagram. You need to create some guerrilla marketing. It's not happening by chance that nonprofits are getting in front of their donors, which makes it even more of a slog, because a lot of these nonprofits that start, they're not business people. Yeah. They're not growth-minded.
And if they're smaller, they don't have the resources to do
Precisely. It. They often are maximizers in how they think. They're going to maximize dollars. The idea of spending money to make money is completely foreign. Not to all, but to certainly many. So, on top of it being a tough economy, punctuated by some of the trends we saw this past year, which was donations, the dollars donated increased.
It's amazing.
But donors decreased. So we're seeing a shift towards larger donations and perhaps the more affluent coming to the table. But as the middle class is squeezed, fewer donations coming from that segment. And then kind of pile on, as I had mentioned earlier, kind of the failure of faith communities. I think is also one of the reasons why generosity isn't something that's top of mind for us. In faith communities, generosity is something that happens every week. We look after our own. We take care of our own. There's a faith tradition around that. And again, we're talking, I guess like a century ago where this was really part of the fabric, and that's been slowly eroded. And so now we're in a very different environment. We're in an environment where we are not community-based. We are isolated behind our devices. We are very transactional. We we commoditize interactions, impact, and things, right? Like we have become accustomed to ordering from Amazon, ordering online, interacting online. We're not necessarily technically savvy. We're technically dependent, which are two totally different things. Yeah. You can have a dependent culture that's not savvy, which creates also all sorts of frustration in culture because we're demanding things from technology that we either can't understand how to access or so we're commoditized, we're isolated, and distracted. So how in that world do we do what must be done, which is, we can't, one of my favorite quotes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quote.
And there are things in life we can only solve. There are problems in the world we can only solve if we come together. So I've just laid out a landscape of disconnection. How do we create, how do we rebuild and create communities that are connected, and not just connected, but connected around a higher why, right? And that why could be anything. We want to solve environmental issues. We want to solve social issues. We want to solve political issues, whatever that looks like, and do what only can be done together. And so, that is kind of the basis of one of my first patents is around how do we, in a sense, instead of trying to change culture, how do we leverage these things? So we've commoditized interaction. What if I could commoditize impact? What if the same way we order a hoodie? Yo, I just got my new brand hoodie. It's on order, man.
Shameless plug.
I am at brandboulevard.com. What am I doing
.ca,
here?
but
.ca,
yeah.
okay.
I think both work.
Okay. My hoodie is on order, and I'm checking for that status update, and I'm refreshing, and it's out for delivery. And each moment I am thinking about this brand, I'm reconnecting to it. I'm more devoted to it. It gets to my door, I unpackage it. And if you are listen, I was just about to say, if you're
not a paid advertisement.
Yeah, if you're bussing in e-commerce, which my kids right now are listening to this going, Dad, you got to stop using the cool words.
That's fire. That's my new one.
Yeah. You're making the unboxing experience something special. I've got some custom tissue in there, and I've got my hoodie. Why can't nonprofits create a similar type of experience, right? And World Vision, I'd credit World Vision with really inventing this decades ago with this idea that you could sponsor a child.
Yeah.
Right? Children are not commodities, okay? And yet it's the same mechanic. I have a one-to-one relationship with the impact, and the impact is this child, and it's a photo, and it's on my fridge, and we look at this as a family every week.
Beautiful, right?
Charity Water comes out with this idea that you can give or subscribe to a well, and you can not just see its location, but you can understand the flow rate and all these metrics around the impact, which validates the impact. I don't need an annual report to tell me that I'm having impact. I can log in and see it at any moment. So there's well-resourced organizations who can spend and I have not verified this, but I'm sure it's millions to create these operations, right? well, who's the software developer? What is the, in a sense, the Shopify for nonprofits, in a sense, the platform that allows individuals or organizations to commoditize impact. And so we developed a technology called Cosmos. And the idea behind it was to allow organizations to, instead of swiping through amounts of money, you would actually swipe through, I'll actually talk about our pilot project. We did a pilot project with the organization in Ottawa, the Firefighters Association in Ottawa, and they do a toy drive every year. But during COVID, they couldn't collect toys and so on, and so we used them as our pilot project. That when you pull up their donation form, instead of donating money to their toy parade, you would see a single toy, and it's an icon of a toy, and it would say one toy. But off to the side on your phone, you could see a child, and it was like a picture of a child, and it would say one child. And it was just intuitive enough that without instruction, without having to have a conversation, you would just intuitively just swipe your finger. And now all of a sudden you're seeing the toy off to the side, the child in the middle, but now you're seeing something else over here. It says family. And you swipe to that. And you can see the economics are changing and what's happening in the mind of the consumer or the donor. They're not thinking about a token $25 donation. They're thinking about how much impact to have. Who wants to give a toy? I want to change a child's, not just a child's Christmas, a family's Christmas. Not just one family's Christmas. I get it plus and minus and increase the number of families I'm supporting. And now instead of considering a token $25 donations to a local organization, I'm chatting with my spouse. Say, hey, guys, listen, wouldn't it be awesome to sponsor a family this Christmas? Right? And, and what if we could do 2 families? That'd be amazing. And then if you click next, the economics are revealed to you, and even some of how they deliver that impact is revealed to you, and you begin to realize, all right, $350. I hadn't planned on giving that. That makes sense. But I can finance this. $30 a month for however many months. Hold on a second. I can double or triple my impact if I just do it, instead of doing it for 10 months, I could do it for 36 months. Right? These are the same decisions we think when we're buying a flat screen or we're online, but
or leasing a car or whatever. We're used to buying like that.
Precisely. But now this is centered around something that hits deeper in your soul, right?
That dollar amount comes off, and it's like, what is this going to do?
I hate to keep ragging on the failure of faith communities, but one of the practices in these faith communities that used to be a part of our culture was that giving was sacred, right? What did our moms always tell us? It's better to give than to receive. Like, when's the last time you heard someone say that, right? Like, and something I encourage our organizations, and when I'm speaking at conferences, one of the lines I lead with is, what if our donation forms, our donation experiences, or our fundraising experiences, the money's for the organization, right? But what if the experience of giving is a gift to the giver? That gift of being able to do something bigger in my life that I know I wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to do, that my work will never fulfill me in, that this one won't fulfill me in, but it's part of me solving a problem with a group of people that otherwise we're all doing our own thing. We're all disconnected, we're all isolated, we're all distracted. We can come together for this one thing and feel a connection to it and serve that sacred ceremony that's honestly been forgotten in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think of Christmas for those who celebrate. I mean, there's an age when you get to, and all of a sudden it's like you realize, hey, it actually feels better when someone opens the gift I gave them than the gift I got, right? So there's that transformation. But I personally, I've been involved in all sorts of different charities, and we have one, it's the Niagara Golf Marathon, and like we're starting to get some dollars in, and like I still to this day have a hard time surrendering or letting go when I reach out to someone and like I know they have resources and support, but they just don't believe in it. So I haven't done a good job in saying the why.
Yeah.
Or I think more or less just realizing that with culture changes and with values and upbringing, some people just don't believe in it, or they have different ways of doing it. For some people, it's giving time and resources versus dollars. And I've done a much better job surrendering to that. But when you talk through some of the great programs and the platform you're offering, is I think the biggest takeaway for me is those charities to be able to like tell their story, right? To then it's more work on them in ways, but to show, okay, for this $300 or this 1,000 or this 20 per month, here's the impact for them to really start to identify, like, here's how we can take those dollars to work. And to me, that's marketing, that's sales, it's everything. Is you know, you become that platform that helps them tell the story, to help make people feel really good about this. So I think the shift is going to happen. I think it's, you know, we're in this difficult state in the world right now where it's going to be, you know, it is some hard times, and it will be, but I think there's, you know, two words we talked about at lunch, which is hope and possibility. And I believe that deep down in every bit of me that, you know, with those two words or words like that more and more people can, you know, start to see that impact is important, and there's more than just this little area, and we can get off our phones and create a better life for a lot of other people, including ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're out of time. Like, we could talk for hours. I don't even get to the list of questions. I think the most important thing for me is how can people help Josh? How can people help Givecloud? How can we help, you know, the local charity that I'm in, to say, hey, have you talked to these guys? What's that look like, and how can we support you?
Man, it's a really thoughtful question. Listen, I want to say, you know, recommend us to your favorite charity. You know, I'm also the kind of guy who's just very practical, and I know that charities don't love change, and they're oftentimes using a tool that they're happy with, and you know, we experience that. But yeah, I mean,
I'll do it for you. Recommend Givecloud.
Yeah, recommend. There it is, man. Like, this is why I've got a sales team, and Sarah is watching this right now, going, "Oh gosh, Josh,
damn it, Josh, that was your moment.
That was my moment," and I'm like, but. Listen, yeah, I mean, that's it. Just you know, recommend Givecloud, and listen, like, we are a technology platform, but we are people first, and we really want to help organizations grow and tell a better story, and help their donors feel a deeper connection to why, right? Why is it $20, or it's, you know, it's clothing these kids, or it's, you know, protecting the vulnerable, or and we've got some tools that really will allow them to do that in a way that won't feel onerous. And I know nonprofits probably aren't believing that as I say it, but give us a try, and so.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. We'll make sure we include the links. But like, from the bottom of my heart, it's been just an honor spending more time with you. A pleasure. Your story's incredible. Your vulnerability. Your team is so lucky to have you as a leader, and I'm excited to watch the next journey of Josh and Givecloud. So
here's to the beginning of a new friendship, for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Chris.
Thanks, man.